In 2025, something strange happened in the auto industry. Not a crash, not a scandal, something quieter than that. BYD, the company that had become the face of the electric vehicle revolution, the company that had outsold Tesla, the company that governments pointed to when they said this is the future, that company announced it was building a new petrol engine, a turboboxer engine, to be specific, and most people scrolled past it, filed it under tech news, moved on. But if you understand what BYD actually is, and what this engine actually means, you don't move on. Because this isn't a product update. This is a signal. And once you see what it's pointing at, the story of where the auto industry is headed starts to look very different from the one we've all been told. Stay with this. Because the most important part isn't the engine itself. It's why the world's biggest EV company felt the need to build one to understand the move. You first have to understand BYD's real position in the market. Most people think of BYD as an EV company. That's the headline version, the social media version, but the actual sales data tells a more complicated story. In 2023, BYD sold close to 3 million vehicles. Roughly half were pure electric. The other half were plug-in hybrids. In 2024, total sales climbed to nearly 3.5 million. And again, hybrids kept pace with EVs almost exactly, not slightly behind, not a minor footnote, equal. Think about what that means for a moment. The company leading the global EV charge is simultaneously building and selling hybrid vehicles at the exact same rate. Every year, consistently. That's not a backup plan. That's a strategy, a deliberate, data-driven, market-tested strategy. And the new turboboxer engine is the next piece of that strategy clicking into place. But this only matters once you understand what BYD is actually trying to solve, and that the story starts to get uncomfortable when you look at it. Closely, let's talk about the engine itself, because the design isn't random. A boxer engine is different from a conventional engine in one specific way. Its cylinders don't sit in a line or a V shape. They face each other horizontally, like two fighters squaring up. When the pistons fire, they move toward and away from each other simultaneously. The result is that vibrations cancel each other out. The engine runs smoother. The vehicle sits more stable. The driving experience feels more controlled without the driver even knowing why. Now add a turbocharger. A turbo takes the energy from exhaust gases that would otherwise be wasted and uses it to force more air into the engine. More air means more fuel burns. More fuel burns means more power from a smaller, lighter engine. A car that would have once needed a large, heavy engine to move well can now move just as well with something far more compact. Put those two things together and something interesting happens. You get an engine that is balanced, quiet, powerful when needed, and small enough to fit cleanly inside a hybrid system alongside a battery. It doesn't hog space. It doesn't add unnecessary weight. It sits there, waiting, ready to activate exactly when the electric motor needs support. That word support is the key to everything, because this engine was never designed to replace electric power. It was designed to cover the moments when electric power alone isn't enough. And that's a very specific problem BYD is trying to solve. Here is the part of the EV story that doesn't make it into the promotional videos. Electric vehicles have real weaknesses, not theoretical ones, not edge cases, structural weaknesses that affect millions of real buyers making real decisions. Right now, charging time is the one everyone knows about. You can fill a petrol tank in 5 minutes. A full EV charge, even with a fast charger, takes at minimum 30 minutes. Without a fast charger, you're looking at hours. In cities with dense charging infrastructure, this is manageable. But outside those cities, it becomes a genuine barrier. Long-distance drivers have to plan their routes around chargers the way previous generations planned routes around petrol stations, except petrol stations were everywhere, and fast chargers still aren't. Then there's cost. The battery is the most expensive component in an electric vehicle. It's the reason so many EVAs are still priced beyond what an average family can comfortably afford. Battery costs are falling, yes, but they haven't fallen far enough, fast enough. And if a battery needs replacing 5 or 6 years into ownership, the bill can be significant enough to erase any fuel savings. Underneath the cost problem is a supply problem. EV batteries depend on lithium, cobalt, nickel. These metals don't come from everywhere. Their supply chains run through specific regions, specific mines, specific geopolitical relationships. If any of those chains get disrupted, and history suggests they will, prices rise and production slows. The all-electric future is, in a very real sense, dependent on a supply chain that no single country fully controls. And then there's the grid. As EV adoption grows, charging demand grows with it. Millions of vehicles charging simultaneously puts pressure on power infrastructure that was never designed to handle that load. Countries are already having quiet conversations about whether their grids can cope. This is not a problem that gets solved quickly. None of this means EVs are failing. They're not. But it does mean that the idea of a single, clean, battery-only future arriving on schedule, solving everything, is more complicated than the headline version suggests. And the companies that recognized this early made a different kind of bet. Toyota took an enormous amount of criticism for the position it held throughout the EV boom. While Tesla was surging and governments were announcing electric targets, Toyota kept investing in hybrids. KEPT, refining combustion. Kept saying, quietly but consistently, that the world wasn't ready for a single-path solution. The auto press called it resistance. Analysts called it denial. Some customers called it irrelevance. But here is where the story turns. Because the ground realities that Toyota was pointing to, charging infrastructure gaps, grid pressure, battery costs, the needs of buyers in developing markets, those realities didn't go away. They're still here. And in 2025, the market is starting to reflect them. Hybrid vehicles are gaining ground again. Not because the technology is new, but because it solves a problem that pure EVs haven't solved yet. The vehicle can run on electric power in the city, where efficiency matters. The engine activates on the highway, where sustained power matters. The driver doesn't need to plan around chargers. The range concern disappears. The system works in conditions where an EV would struggle. Toyota understood something that the pure EV narrative dismissed. Convenience beats ideology every time, at scale. Not in tech reviews. Not in government policy documents. In the actual decision a buyer makes when they're standing in a showroom calculating whether a vehicle fits. Their real life, not the life they're supposed to have, but the one they actually live. Toyota's strategy looked slow. It now looks like patience, and BYD watching its own hybrid sales match, its EV sales year after year, appears to have reached the same conclusion from the opposite direction. If the biggest EV company in the world is building a turboboxer engine, it's because the data inside that company is telling a story about what buyers actually need that doesn't match the story being told outside it. What makes this more than just a business story is the hidden technology that holds all of it together. The engine and the motor are only part of the picture. The part that most people never see is the smart control system sitting between them, monitoring vehicle speed, battery level, temperature, driving behavior, road conditions, and deciding, in real time, which power source should be active and when. When you're in city traffic, the system reads the situation and keeps the engine off. Electric mode, silent, clean, efficient. The moment you need more power, accelerating onto a motorway, climbing a long hill, running the battery low, the system activates the engine, smoothly, often without the driver noticing the transition at all. This is called thermal management and energy balancing. And it's what separates a genuinely advanced hybrid system from an older one. The engine only runs when it's operating at peak efficiency. The battery only depletes to a level the system calculates as safe. The emissions are controlled not by disabling the engine entirely, but by using it precisely only in the conditions where it performs cleanest. The result is a vehicle that doesn't ask the driver to make trade-offs. It makes those decisions automatically, invisibly, constantly. You get the instant response of an electric motor at low speeds. You get the sustained power of a turbo engine on long runs. You get a range that doesn't require a detour to a charging station. And the system manages all of it without you needing to think about it. That invisibility, the fact that the technology disappears into the background, is arguably the most important feature of all. Because the vehicles that change markets aren't always the most technically impressive. They're the ones that remove friction from ordinary life, so completely that people stop noticing the technology and start depending on it. So, here is the question that this whole story leaves open. And It's a bigger question than it might first appear. We have spent the last several years operating on a particular assumption: that the future of transportation was settled, that the direction was fixed, that electric vehicles were the destination and everything else was a detour. Governments built policy around it. Asterisk.